What is up, YouTube? I am here today with Sebastian High from Elite Prospects, the USHL scout over there, and he does great work at Lockdown Prospects. We're going to do a top 16 mock draft. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. We did something over on my channel as well, even though we had a couple technical difficulties. So we'll see how it comes out in the end. But it was great chatting about the combine, and I'm very excited to do a mock draft here because these are just like the funnest exercises here before the draft, right? Just get to play the mental games and kind of see which players make sense in which locations.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to do some of the talking this time because I talked so much on just all things combine. You guys got to check out that episode at Locked On. I love them. I honestly have been watching Locked On for a while. We actually talked about Vaslav Nestrasil, and one of the things is I watched Sebastian High's Locked On Prospects video on Vaslav Nestrasil to understand the pronunciation, and I didn't know how to say it until then. So
And I got it wrong in that video. Like I only corrected my pronunciation after the fact. So you learned but from a not informed source very clearly.
yes, I was incorrect talking to him, but I will say I got that information from Sebastian. So, Vaslav, you're watching. I know your dad probably is, so tell him that it was Sebastian. But for the first pick, because we have a mock draft on Draft Pros coming up too, on NHL Draft Pros that we have to get to with it's the huge board meeting. So we have a ton of mock drafts coming. But for the first pick, who do you think the Islanders are going to select at number one?
Absolute shocker here at number one. We're going with Matthew Schaefer. I think that he's there in every single mock right now. I think Michael Misa has a whole bunch of arguments here as well, but with just how well Matthew Schaefer will interview, at the combine, as you were saying, every team was just loving their conversations with him, and every media member was loving their conversations with him. So, on top of being one of the youngest players in the draft class, bringing dynamic, high-end skating and playmaking and handling ability, great shot as well from the blue line. He's so versatile, adaptable, intelligent, skilled. Like, there's not really much that you're missing out on with this player. I think that there's a pretty linear comparison to a player like Miro Heiskanen here, but also with that like true like first power play quarterback type of potential too, where I think that Thomas Harley kind of co-opted that role this season in Dallas. But I think that there's so much potential here with Matthew Schaefer, and for a team like the Islanders, who weren't expected to be drafting top like 10 or 9, let alone top 1, getting the not just likely best player at this point in the draft, but a player who's almost a full year younger than many of his peers. I think it's just going to be too much to really look away from there for the Isles and Matthew Dash.
I completely agree. I think this is going to be a fantastic fit with Noah Dobson on the other side, and this is an easy pick. And for San Jose at two, I think that they're going to be running to their phone to get Michael Misa, the guy that I think is the best player in the draft. I don't want to screw up my rankings, but I actually have him number one on my latest rankings that I'm going to be dropping. And I think Michael Misa is just by far and the way the best forward in this class. I think it's very close with him and Matthew Schaefer, who's the best. But his OHL production and what he's done the past couple years, I think that he silenced all the doubters of what he did last year. And then this year, it was all about offense, scoring. I mean, he wasn't invited to Team Canada, which I was super upset about, but that was not hockey related. I'm not going to get into that. But I really wanted to see him. It would have made our lives easier as scouts just learning how he would have played at that tournament. But in my opinion, I think that they needed somebody that could score, and they did not win. So, what do you think of number two with Michael Misa?
I love that pick. I think that for San Jose, getting to roll out a duo of Michael Misa and Macklin Celebrini is just way too tempting to pass up on. Like, sure, I think that James Higgins could make sense in that kind of role, but you already have players that are kind of like a bit smaller, play on the wing, guys like the other Eklund. I was gonna say Victor Eklund, but William Eklund there in San Jose, and a bunch of other talents there on the wings, but a bit of a limitation in terms of size, apart from Quentin Musty and Igor Chernyshov in terms of the long-term guys. So I think that a guy like Misa, who is 6'1", very solidly built, I think he's going to be playing NHL minutes at around 200 or 210 pounds when he fills out. And again, he's a guy that can play any kind of minute, any kind of role. And when you need to score a goal late in the game, just plug him on the wing of Macklin Celebrini and reap the benefits. I think that those two would combine wonderfully together.
Completely agree. Just want to put out 2 points. His pro comparisons were Kirill Kaprizov and Nikita Kucherov for his wing comparisons, and then I asked him who his center comps were, and they were actually Patrice Bergeron, and Sidney Crosby. So you got to love that, as well as he played with Igor Chernyshov. And he also skated with Quentin Musty in the offseason many times with Jack Ivankovich and his father, and they run the ice out there. So I think that would be a fantastic pick for San Jose. But number three, who do you think the Chicago Blackhawks will take?
I think the most likely candidate for the Chicago Blackhawks has to be Anton Frondell at third overall. The Hawks are out here for a centerman. We already know this. There have been question marks this season around is Connor Bedard going to be at his best as a center long term or on the wing? Getting in a player who's a natural center and brings real two-way gift as well, on top of having an absolute whopper of a one-timer, I think is going to be really enticing for Chicago. On top of that, Frondell interviews very, very well. This is a competitive kid. He's aware and knows his own limitations very, very well. Like, for instance, at the U18 World at the end of the season, where he got basically teleported in after the playoffs ended in Sweden, missed the first couple games there, but played the rest of the tournament. He himself said at the end of the tournament, like, I did not play very well here. And he didn't. That was not his best hockey this season, but there's a level of self-reflection and awareness there with that player I think that the Hawks are going to really love. And in terms of projectable top six scoring talent where you know you're getting defensive work rate, defensive intelligence, and an absolute like high-end goal scoring ceiling, that's a whole lot to look forward to if you're a Hawks fan. And the closer we're inching towards the draft, the more confident I'm becoming in this player being the guy at number three.
Bucks right now at Sports FanDuel Sports have him at minus 160 now, even though it started out as plus 600. So it does look like Frondell, the shooting sniper with a great heavy slap shot and versatility as a winger, could be the Chicago Blackhawks pick. His, as I've continued to say, if you've watched me in the SHL, it's a lot harder with the bigger ice with the transition game. It's going to be a lot better with the shorter rink size. So I think Frondell would be the player that the Blackhawks take. And at Utah Mammoths at 4, I wish it was the Yetis, but it is the Mammoths. I am going to take Caleb Desnoyers here. The reason that I pause is because I believe that Brady Martin could be the pick here, but I just can't do it. I cannot put Brady Martin over Desnoyers, James Haggins, and Porter Martin. If it happens, it happens, but I think it's going to be a trade down. And we're not specifically doing trade downs at this mock draft in the top 17, actually, because it's going to be 16 plus 1 with Montreal, the back-to-backs. But I think Desnoyers is going to be the pick if Utah stays here. Obviously, he could be the true number two center. Maybe he grows into being a number one center. I don't know. I'm big on Logan Cooley as well as, they have a lot of great players over there. Clayton Keller is one of my favorite players. Dylan Gunther is great too. They have an incredible top six. And then they have just so many. I mean, Daniil Boot and Dmitry Shimashev, they have just so many players. I think you just take this like solidified second line center. And if you put him at number one center too, if he just turns into that, and you could have one of the best players that Utah has on their roster. And I don't think it's bad to do that. So yeah, what do you think about Utah with Desnoyers?
I watched Dinwiddie live this season and was just floored by how NHL style his reads are. He's an incredibly fast processor of the game, and that was even more evident while watching a game live with his entire family, literally 2 rows in front of me, like cheering him on, had the posters up and everything as he was playing there in Blainville, right outside Montreal. And he's just a player that makes these great decisions so routinely, brings that physicality, brings playmaking skill. There's not much he can't do. He's so defensively solid. For Utah, I think as a piece of what they're missing, this is very much the style of player that they still need in their lineup, right? They have a lot of these all offense players like Logan Cooley, as you mentioned, Dylan Gunther, Clayton Keller, of course, right? None of these people are like defensive stalwarts that you're going to put out there with a minute left on the clock and trust to win an important draw and just kill off the time, whether it's pretty or not, doesn't matter. That's where Dinwiddie comes in and brings a completely new profile for Utah. So I think that's a great fit. And at number 5 for the Nashville Predators, I think that there's such an obvious pick here, and it's been the player I've been mocking to Nashville ever since the lottery and even before the lottery, James Higgins, right? A player with all the skill in the world, with this elite level skating and playmaking ability, really grew out his frame as well this season. He added a bunch of weight to his frame. He's now listed at 5'10" and a half and 186 pounds. That's a very solid kind of build for a guy who started out the season at just over 170 pounds. That's a lot to look forward to, I think, for Nashville, who just need elite skill. They don't have any elite skill in their prospect pool. They have one of the deeper pools in the entire NHL, but they lack that true blue chip game changing prospect and one that was pretty much expected to go first overall up until December of last year, is likely going to be available for them at fifth. So I think it'd be a bit of a 2000 IQ move if you were passing on him, and you're probably not going to enjoy that decision long term. I think if you're passing on James Higgins at fifth overall, so I have Barry Trotz going with him. But at number six, who do you have the Philadelphia Flyers going for?
You know, this is really interesting. I've heard Jake O'Brien's name, so I'm going to say Jake O'Brien here because I think it would be an incredible fit with Matvei Michkov, especially on the power play. And I think that obviously the easiest pick would kind of be, or the most fan type of pick would be Porter Martone here. But I do think Porter Martone might be the guy that kind of falls in this class, not based on him. I think he's a wonderful person. Hockey Canada loves him. He put the C on his team and his chest for a reason for Brantford. And I think that he is incredibly skilled, but I think Jake O'Brien has just incredible amount of vision. His playmaking was absolutely incredible. For Brantford, Rip Zach Hyman. Brantford was an incredible team with Nick Lardis. He scored 72 goals. Jake O'Brien was a big reason for that, especially on the power play. And then Jake O'Brien also, they say he's a power play merchant. And I'll say this, he is not, and that's just a superstar ability to be great with space. And also, like, he's going to be a great power play player.
Absolutely, he
Yeah.
will. Yeah, like the power play ability is just so high end, and we did have some concerns at elite prospects in terms of when we were figuring out where we were placing him on our board. We were very much debating between 10 and 14, and he ended up at 10. But there's a lot of dissenting arguments there as well because we see a lot of like junior habits as well in his playmaking, especially low pace, trying to basically wait for something to develop and then just finding that pinpoint perfect pass. Those aren't plays that happen all that often in the NHL, but I think that if you're taking that swing on the elite playmaking ability, the elite creativity, and the elite handling ability, I mean, sixth overall, I think that's perfectly in the range for this player.
So at seven, who do you think Boston will take?
I have them going for a guy that is basically going to roll back the years a little bit on identity with the Boston Bruins, going back to that like 2010 Boston Bruins style, being mean, being gritty, being hard to play against. I think Brady Martin is that guy. I think that there's a lot of teams in this range that will think long and hard about Brady Martin. He might end up going just outside the top 10. I don't really see him falling beyond the Pittsburgh Penguins at 11th because we always know that Kyle Dubas and Sue Greyhound's link, and I think that he would fit in very well there as well. But I have the Bruins going for that for him, even though, as you mentioned, Martone is still on the board. Roger McQueen would be very enticing here. There's a lot of choice, I think, in the back end of the top 10 where teams are going to have to pick a player that they really like over a player they really like. They're going to have to kind of find those little differences, and I think that in terms of a stylistic fit, in terms of identity, and also Boston is kind of entering a bit more of a rebuilding stage, perhaps, right? You're going to have to bring in talent and you build from the middle of the ice. So I think Martin is the guy here for the Boston Bruins. But at number eight, do the Seattle Kraken stop the fall?
I always put Radim Merca here at this spot, but I think that Martone is going to be the pick. I think that Martone is just an incredible player that has a ton of vision, and I think that his vision goes overlooked a little bit. I think that he has a great shot. His hands are really good for a big player. Obviously, his skating is kind of the thing that everybody points to. His first three strides are a little tough, and obviously that makes or breaks a game for you, especially in the playoffs. But if he's going to go to a place like Penn State, or if he's going to go to a school, maybe he goes back to Brantford, which is kind of like the what is it sounds like is happening. I just feel like if he went to college, it would be a really good for his game because he's going to be able to skate 4 times a week in practice. I think when you get NHL coaches around him and better coaches, they're just going to be able to fix his skating. I talked to Chris Peters about this. He said that Martone's ability to become a better skater within the last, 3 years has been absolutely incredible where he's come from. So I don't think that's going to continue. I think that's going to continue to be the path and the trajectory. So I think that Martone would just be a guy that's best player available for Seattle where they need that kind of player.
And number nine, I have the Buffalo Sabres going for the other guy you were considering there, Radim Murtka, the 6'6" right shot defenseman who skates wonderfully, is just a pain to play against. He's a very effective rush defender and explored a lot more of his offensive game as well as the year wore on there in Seattle, and apparently interviewed very well. And the Buffalo Sabres, I mean, they have likely Bowen Byram on the trademark market, and they need help on the right side. They have a lot of left shot defensemen in that system. What they lack is a big right shot defenseman, and that is precisely what Murtka brings. And I think that for a team that's been looking to add bite and grit to kind of get over that hump and actually make it to the playoffs for the first time in how many years? I think Murtka could be a really big part in helping them get to that stage. And again, I don't think that we're going to see a top 10 or top 9 with only one defenseman selected. I expect there to be at least another blue liner here in the mix, and 9 is probably around the floor for Murtka as well of where he goes on draft day. So a player I
Yeah.
think fits in very nicely there with Buffalo. At number 10, the Anaheim Ducks are going to have a lot of options, and this is not a team that always goes for the conventional selection. We saw that last season at the draft with Beckett Seneca at third overall. Do you have them going a bit off the board again here at 10th, or going for a guy who's falling a little bit?
This is going to be one of those picks that they could go any direction, but they took Beckett Seneca last year, and he's a taller forward. I think that they're going to take a smaller forward and pair him up with Leo Carlson, and that's Victor Eklund. I really like Victor Eklund's game. He was a play driver for a line with Anton Frondel, and when you're just kind of feeding Anton Frondel, it's going to be great. I think that Leo Carlson is kind of an Anton Frondel-esque player, so why not get him a player like Victor Eklund? Victor Eklund has one of the best personalities in the entire draft. I just love this kid, so yeah, yeah. And at number 11, who do you think Pittsburgh is going to take?
This is tough because like the Pittsburgh Penguins have weaknesses in like every single position of the prospect pool, so they could go any direction, I think, with this selection. My guess is that they go for a player that is built for the modern playoff style of game, and that would be Kayshawn Aitchison, bringing in physicality, mobility, violence, and a real desire to inflict pain on the players he plays against. I think that's something that Kyle Dubas is going to look at, and also from learning from his tenure there in Toronto of the styles of players he maybe wasn't adding so much in the draft, but was having to spend big draft picks to go and get at the deadline when they were going into the playoffs. Why not just spend a pick for that style of player to begin with when you're entering a bit of a rebuild? I think a guy like Aitchison's going to be playing big minutes in the NHL and would fit in really nicely in terms of bringing in a different element to what the Penguins have in their system to begin with.
And I'm just going to show the mock draft here. Yeah, and this is the top 11 picks so far. Obviously, it's pretty good picks, but for number 12 for the Rangers, this is a tough one for you, or I mean for me, but I'm going to say because I would have taken a player like Martin here. Obviously, he would be falling, but I'm going to say Roger McQueen. I think Roger McQueen is just falling here. I think he would be a really good option, and I really just like Roger McQueen. He has a cat named Potato. His back injury seems pretty good. It was obviously he said that it was misdiagnosed and he doesn't have pain for the last 30 days. So I just think that that would be a really good pick for the Rangers. And obviously, I want to make sure that this is yes. So yeah, that was the top 12. And who do you have for Detroit at 13?
This is a tough one. I mean, like, I'm struggling a little bit here because I don't know if they're going to go with the same strategy they've had the draft for the last like 3 years, which is basically just go for the projectable middle six guy in the first round. And if they do that, I think guys like Malcolm Spence could be pretty appealing. Or if maybe they switch things up a little bit because they're stuck in a like mediocrity level right now of not quite being over the hump in the playoffs. But I think that what they're gonna see and maybe diagnose with their own lineup of what they need the most, it's just going to be intensity, desire, grit. And there's no player in this range that exemplifies that more than Carter Bear. I think that Carter Bear would be a phenomenal fit in Detroit, and especially with him being back on his skates and skating again after a partially lacerated Achilles injury. That is more than an accelerated timeline in terms of recovery. Like, very, very impressive stuff there for Carter Bear, and a player who is just like bred for playoff hockey, right? Like this guy competes hard every single shift, brings a non-stop motor, and on top of that, game-breaking playmaking ability. That's something I think that could feed guys like Dylan Larkin or like Lucas Raymond for a really long time there in Detroit. And I mean, also thinking of like a second line of like a matchup line where you're combining Marco Casper and Carter Bear. That is hell to play against in the NHL. So I think Carter Bear makes a lot of sense here for Detroit. But moving on, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets here at 14th overall. Which name is at the top of your list here for Columbus?
Lyndon Lakovich. He has met with them. He went to dinner with them, I believe, at the combine, and this guy just has a lot of upside. When he first came into the WHL, he was just trying to dangle through three defenders, didn't really understand how to play a full 200-foot game. He kind of figured that out as you go. Obviously, young players are just trying to get the highlights. With Moose Jaw last year, it was not the best season, but the year before then, they won the championship when they got a guy like Savoy. And Savoy and them were just dominant. You didn't really have to do much. So they were up playing Fortnite till 4 a.m. and then they would come out and beat a team like 4-1. So I think Lyndon Lakovich has been on multiple types of teams and has to deal with that adversity, but this guy is awesome. He's a very great star. He was a leader of Moose Jaw and he had to overcome just a lot of things just to understand his size. Like it's very hard to grow that much and also have to learn about how to play at that size. And also, I think of him as like a 5'11 forward that happens to be 6'4. He is really good with his edge work and his skating. And in my opinion, like his hands and playmaking and his IQ, I just think that he's the full package and kind of being undervalued in this class. So for 15 for Vancouver, who are you taking?
I mean, this is a difficult one because the Canucks didn't even send their GM to the combine, so they're probably going to be trading this selection before the draft
Oh,
arrives. But if they were to keep it, the player I have written in here is Jackson Smith, a player that I think has the highest upside of maybe any player left on the board at this stage. And of all the players to like learn under the tutelage of a guy like Quinn Hughes, I think that Jackson Smith is one of the players that could have the biggest like growth potential even once he does reach the NHL level. But first, he's going to have the college step to go through. He's going to, I think, look really good there in college with his physicality, his size, right? 6'4", 200 pounds, skates like the wind, lots of offensive growing room as well. So just a complete package in that sense. And I think that he'd be very enticing if the Canucks were to keep that selection. But let's move on here to 16th overall, and you are picking for my team, the Montreal
yeah.
Canadiens. Who makes sense here for you?
I'm going to give you guys a great pick here, and he is the best shooter in the entire draft and can shoot at all angles. Shout out New Wave Hockey Link because he put me onto this very early in the season, and that's Justin Carbonneau. And maybe this is some rumors or maybe this is news, but this man is probably going to play in the NCAA next year. And the rumblings here is that he could potentially, and I've heard this from multiple sources even before the combine, take over the Ryan Leonard role. And I would absolutely love that. And I think that that's going to be incredible. I know they got Bill Zonin for 3 first-round picks just to try to convince him to stay. And obviously they made him captain, but I do not think that that's going to make him stay. Obviously, he was very productive in the queue. I think that he could, if there's somebody that like shocks the world that he's a top 10 pick to like Anaheim or Pat Verbeek or someone like that, I think it could be Carbon. Like I said, he can shoot at any angle. I think that his shot is disgusting. But the thing is that because he has that disgusting shot, he was just shooting from all over and it was kind of disrupting the flow of play. But that's because he was just trying to do too much. He was kind of hero balling it. If you give this guy really good teammates and yeah, if you give this guy incredible teammates, and what if him and or not Will Smith, what if him and J
James Higgins?
James Haggins. I was thinking Jack Hughes. I was like, that is not who, but it like I just see it. If him and James Haggins are in a line together, this guy's putting up 20 goals, like
Oh yeah.
plus.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think he'd be a great fit in Montreal. Like I got to watch him live as well, and I mean the Habs brass will have seen him live a whole bunch this season because he plays right on the Montreal North Shore. You just got to drive like half an hour to go up there. And on top of the disgusting shot, he brings disgusting hands, great skating ability, and in flashes, very impressive physicality. There's not the
Yeah.
most like mature utilization of it yet, but it is there. He's a strong guy, 205 pounds, like really quite heavy already. And yeah, I think in terms of tools, Montreal want game breakers. He's a potential game breaker. But to wrap up the mock draft, we have 17th overall, back again with the Montreal Canadiens, and I think they're going to stick on the same thing with the right side, but this time on defense rather than at forward, going with Logan Hensler from the University of Wisconsin, a player that I've been watching a lot lately because I'm currently writing an article over at Elite Prospects, which should be out in the coming days. But he's a guy that brings a combination of elite mobility, very high-end physicality, and a massive growth in his offensive involvement and dynamism in the late end of the season here, this campaign with Wisconsin. He was quite hesitant, I think, earlier on in the campaign when he was still adjusting to the college pace, but by the end, he really, really was impressing with his offensive activations, really fluid handler at speed, is able to cut to the inside, really, really versatile, I think, in what he can bring to the ice. And even though he's being framed as like a low upside kind of guy, I still think that this guy has like easily second pairing potential and maybe even more than that, maybe like leading a second pairing. And I mean, in terms of potential like compliments for a player like Lane Hudson, he's up that alley in terms of players who could fit that mold at the end of the day. But what are your thoughts there in terms of Carbonneau and Hensler being fits with the Montreal Canadiens?
I really like Hensler. Hensler is one of the guys I got to interview very early on in the process, and he's just somebody that homebody, family guy. He compared himself to a sloth a couple years ago, and I think now it's a dog. If you're going to do the Montreal question that everybody was tripped up on in the combine, but this guy is absolutely incredible. He says that he's a right-handed Jake Sanderson. I think that he definitely did not pick the right decision going to the NCAA. He might have wanted to stay in the
Especially
NCAA.
Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Should have gone
he
to a
should have
different
went to
program.
Minnesota. Go to Minnesota. You're a Minnesota kid. Come on. I love Hensler. He is really skilled. I think that his playmaking has a lot more to show even next year because like you saw this clip of him beating through the entire defense against Notre Dame and then going behind the net and then passing to his center right in front of the middle of the net. And then it was a clear, incredible goal. But it was a great playmaking. He has that. His skating is great. He skates like the wind, like you said with Jackson Smith. I think that this is a very deep draft for right-handed defensemen for some reason. I've never seen this many 6'4" and above, or for Logan Hensler 6'2", but I'm talking about more of like
Blake
there's a
Fiddlers
ton.
and Carter Ramaco. List goes.
Part Nico, there's just a lot. I mean, even talking about just defensemen, Rombatch, who's going to the Golden Gophers with him, is 6'6", and he grew up a Blackhawks fan. So shout out Jacob Rombatch, who I owe a pint of ice cream, raspberry chocolate chip, if he makes it to the Blackhawks, because I bet him. I was like, please come here, I'll buy you that. I guess it's not really more of a bet, but Simon Wang is also big. But that closes out our top 16 plus one is the Habs mock draft with Sebastian High. Here it is on the screen, obviously. Obviously, like I just feel like this is going to be such a weird draft, so you never really know how it's going to be. But thank you so much, Sebastian, for coming on. And I'm going to link everything he does, as well as hopefully I post this after the Logan Hensler article comes out, because I will post it in the description if you want to take a look at that. But thank you so much. You're awesome to talk to. Obviously, you know so much about NHL draft prospects and pucks, so I love having you on.
Always a pleasure to talk. So thanks for having me on as well. And I mean, mock drafts are always an absolute blast. So I appreciate it.
Yep, we have one to get to very soon at NHL Draft Pro, so you guys are going to want to check that out too. I'll probably link that in the description too, because Mark is a absolute animal. But thank you so much. This is your Hot Ones time. You can look at this screen, this screen, this screen, tell you where to find you.
All right, so my work is concentrated over at Twitter on Twitter, hi_Sebastian. But you can find a lot of my stuff as well on YouTube at Locked On NHL Prospects or wherever you find your podcasts. I do almost daily uploads over there. And for my like writing and scouting work as well, Elite Prospects is the place to go. If you have yet to go get the Elite Prospects draft guide, it is finalized. It's out there. It's 1,800 pages of very, very studious work that our entire team put together. Would really appreciate if you could give that a look if you haven't already. Just a lot of insight there if you want to familiarize yourself with the players that are coming in to the NHL in the coming seasons.
And we finally got an appearance from your cat. What a finish.
One of my two cats. This is Sammy. The other cat is sleeping right below, right over here.
But thank you so much for coming on. Smack that like button. Follow this man. Look at all of his content. Thank you so much, and see you guys later.